The Appalachian Account by Rowan Chandler. Please enjoy the film. Today we will be looking at the Appalachian forests and rivers, and how making sure that they thrive is how we will ensure that we in turn thrive ourselves. Here we have some footage and images of old logging stumps and of stumps that have been burned by forest fires. In the past, forest fires were a major problem in Kentucky, especially the Appalachian area. During a single year, many may rage, some at the same time. Thankfully, however, an increase in rainfall and an increase in pollution control and stricter laws have decreased the amount of fires that start. When asked on the matter, this is what Professor Bill Keyes had to say. Please enjoy the interview. For the record, state your name and age.
Bill Keyes, 56.
All right, thank you. Now, how long have you lived in the area?
56 years.
All right. Do you remember any pollution problems that the area of Kentucky and Tennessee in general have had in the past?
In my lifetime, the biggest pollution problem in this area was probably with Yellow Creek from the Millsboro Tanning Company. During the 70s, there was a lot of pollution in the creek. Fish almost all died out, and there was a huge effort to clean that up and to stop the dumping of chemicals by the Millsboro Tanning Company in the Yellow Creek. And that got much better in the 80s, and the tanning company eventually shut down, so it's not an issue today. The other big issue for the area has been with strip mining and clear cutting of forests, and that takes away the ability of the soil to hold on, the roots hold the soil together, and create problems with flooding. Create problems, the 77 flood. One of the major issues with the 77 flood is that there were some mines that released some of their ponds at the same time the rains came down, so that extra water contributed to the major flooding in Pineville, as well as the runoff where there were no trees and vegetation to hold the water in. So yeah, it's been quite a bit. I think it's better today. I think the government regulations on strip mines and on logging has improved that. As far as trash and that kind of pollution, it's always been an issue in this area. I think as far as major trash like abandoned cars and things like that, and washing machines, it's gotten better with our 109 board and our solid waste board. But just trash, paper and cups and things like that, I think it's gotten worse today.
Do you think there are anything else that could be done to help decrease the amount of impact of the pollution and the amount of pollution itself that is left in the area?
Well, like I said, I do think the government has done a good job of regulating certain industries to help, and there's a balance there. You got to have some, you can't just completely shut the industry down, but at the same time, there's got to be some respect for the environment and some care taken of the environment. I think the biggest thing that can be done is just people need to do a better job. I know the past 2 weeks we've had the pride cleanups here in Bell County, and that's a huge thing. Shouldn't have to do it, because there shouldn't be any trash out there. People just need to do a better job of putting their trash in garbage cans and not throwing it out.
Do you remember any wildfires or an increase in fires?
I think the biggest problem we've had with wildfires in this area are usually weather related and rainfall related when it gets very dry and windy. Wildfires are a natural occurrence. I know from time to time we've had issues with people setting them. I think the biggest times we've had the biggest issues with wildfires are when one gets set or one gets started, and then somebody thinks that's cool, so they set another one, and we'll wind up with 3 or 4 or 5 going at the same time, and that's not a good thing.
Let's see here. Anything else you'd like to say on the topic?
I believe we've covered it.
All right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Keyes vastly understated the issue that the tannery and sewage treatment plant caused for the Bell County and other areas. Yellow Creek River used to run black for miles, with the kind of foul smell that would make people vomit. Touching the water would cause red blisters and a rash, and any fish horrendously disfigured and completely inedible. It is believed that a grand total of 13,000 cancer deaths were caused by this foul water, which seeped not only into the river, but into any wells and water sources nearby. In 1983, the city engineer testified that 2.5 million gallons of raw sewage and tannery chemicals had been dumped into Yellow Creek that year alone. Chief among the polluting chemicals was chromium, a highly radioactive material that was used in the tanning process. It is believed to be the main agent for all of the cancer deaths in the area, and it is widely believed by many of the ecological organizations that it has settled into the silt, into a layer of foul pollution beneath the creek. This means that every time the river floods or the silt is disturbed, there is a chance that the river will become fouled once again for a long time. Unfortunately, extracting an entire layer of sediment from a river is nigh impossible. So, how do we stop something like this from happening again? Stricter regulations, as Bill Keyes said. Though they have been in place, far too many ignore them. However, the repercussions for such regulations cannot be ignored. One example of these repercussions is Larry Wilson, a man who worked for years as an environmental activist. The same year that the pollution was being officially reported, Mr. Wilson was shot with a shotgun. His dog was fatally poisoned in his front yard. The brakes on his car were cut as his wife drove home from work one day. The entire hydraulic brake system has been destroyed, and there have been numerous threats on his life since. Why has this happened, you ask? Mr. Wilson has gone on record saying, "We are challenging the good old boy system that's been entrenched here for over 100 years. We have families who think they deserve a birthright of millions of dollars from the taxpayers' public offices and places in the power structure. Because we expose the corruption and destruction of our area, we were targeted." He suspects that the attempt on his life, with previously mentioned shotgun, was prompted by his leadership of a campaign to clean up local waterways polluted by the city's sewage treatment plant and the tannery. It is believed that his assailant was an employee or former employee of the tannery, acting in retribution for his job being lost after the tannery was shut down. The Yellow Creek River runs from the Cumberland River all the way through Middlesboro. That is miles upon miles of potentially tainted water. And every time the river floods, there's a chance it'll be tainted again. Tributaries of Yellow Creek run all throughout Middlesboro. This more than explains why the entire area's water supply had been completely ruined. However, I think that is quite enough about the depressing topic of Yellow Creek. As Mr. Bill Keyes said, there has been an increase and problem with flooding. As forests are stripped and soil is left bare, the rain washes the silt and dirt into the rivers, which slow down, causing the soil to settle to the bottom, increasing the height of the riverbed, which increases the height of the river in turn. This means flooding is becoming more and more common in the area. and adequate measures have not been taken to prevent this issue from continuing. As many who will be listening to this know, the flood of '77 hit the Appalachian area incredibly hard. Pineville, Kentucky is an example of a town that was almost completely destroyed by the flooding. Pineville is shaped like a bowl, which meant that when the flooding happened, the water stayed. Drainage systems didn't work or weren't in place yet, and it took days or even weeks for the water to finally recede. What was left behind when it did was ruined buildings and feet of mud and silt. Those who remember the incident find it one of the most haunting experiences of their lives. The cleanup afterwards was horrendous. They had to sift through not only the mud, but the raw sewage that was pushed back up to the city's sewers, and the corpses of animals and people. And since then, while measures have been taken to keep Pineville from flooding, there are other areas near Pineville that have flooded since. One example is the 4 Mile area, in which in the past 5 years alone has been severely flooded at least 4 times, 2 times of which have caused massive property damage, including the destruction of several houses. Returning to the subject of how Pineville protects itself, the city installed flood walls right after the flood of '77, which it has gates it can close to completely seal off the city. However, flood damage isn't the only problem that occurs when the river overflows. All the trash and pollution and garbage that is left inside the river and near it is all swelled up and brought right back to civilization. In recent years, I myself have seen a reef of garbage and litter left in the wake of a receding flood tide. And every year, this garbage gets worse and worse. In 2018, in the big flood that happened in the 4 Mile area, there were bags hanging from trees, cups stuck in branches. There were several old TV sets that had been left out, just strewn around. This doesn't even take into account the countless tires and barrels and wreckages of cars that are all just abandoned in the wilderness. This trash is getting worse. Trash in the hills aren't the only problems that the forests face, however. In January of 2017, a massive wildfire hit. The fire was originally started by 2 juveniles in a park near Gatlinburg. It burned down about 10,000 acres, along with another 6,000 acres outside of the park. Strong winds blew the embers from that fire into Gatlinburg. The wildfire then ravaged many parts of Gatlinburg, which drew national attention. But, unfortunately, that wasn't where it stopped. After that, another wave of wildfires hit, which burned down more than 120,000 acres across the southeast. Firefighters have gone on to say that because of the persistent drought conditions, there'll be more wildfires in the future. Wildfires such as these are not an uncommon occurrence in the Appalachian area. This cross-section taken out of a logged tree shows many concentric rings where forest fires had burned the outside of the tree and it had then grown around that. Every single burn line shows another year in which it suffered a forest fire attack. The worst part about it all is that the natural forest fires in the area are incredibly uncommon. 90% of forest fires that happen are started by arsonists who are emboldened by the burning of one forest fire and think that they can then get away with starting another, blaming the original as the culprit. And thus concludes the Appalachian account. I thank you for your time and for your interest. Now, if you've learned anything from what I've done here, please remember to protect your environment while you still have it.